so wonderful to see you after so long, Nainoa. Really, really, really special.
Yeah, it's an honor for me, Craig. Thank you for connecting us. As I was thinking about it, it's 6 years since I was
Wow.
in False Bay, and yeah, a day that changed my life. So it's just an honor to see you. Thank you, mahalo.
The honor is all mine, I promise you. And I was just, I was going back in my mind last night to how we first met, and having you sailing in that incredible traditional Hawaiian canoe into False Bay, which I know wasn't easy, and then meeting you aboard that incredible vessel. And I remember so clearly, all the hairs standing up on my neck as you addressed the crew, and I had a sense of that incredible voyage that you'd done, and my whole body was tingling. Um, and spending that time with you and the crew and diving together and getting a sense of your journey and what you've been through it was life changing for me. Um, so it's so good after all these years I remembered it as if it was yesterday. Um, so I was wondering what was it like for you coming all that way and coming to the tip of Africa and coming into False Bay?
That's a large question. Much of the voyage that was really generated from our teachers, and so the great value of teachers that you have is the same with us. And much of it was just kind of new language of coming from the earth that we don't know, climate change and sustainability and hypoxia and dead zones, and this new language that we're not understanding or hearing. And we were just told basically through our teachers that you can't protect what you don't understand, and you won't if you don't care, and you can't do it by yourself. So this notion was you got to take Hokulea around the world. And it took us 14 years to agree to that instruction from our teachers. It took us 6 years of training, solid training, hard training. And the place that is so imprinted in not just my mind, but in everything about me is South Africa. Because ironically, it was because we feared it the most. That Africa was a problem. It didn't have a Panama Canal, and you could go north and through Yemen and Somalia and the instability in the Red Sea, or you could go south and then deal with arguably the highest incidence of rogue waves, and we chose to trust nature than to trust human violence. Our job was to stay out of the storm, and now the storms are coming, and we have to learn how to be able to face them, like climate change and the heat shifts on the planets. And I remember that long. It was the shortest leg of the 33 legs we changed. I'm just thinking out loud, and it was only 1,000 miles, but it took us 61 days to get around South Africa because we had to keep hiding. The day before we came to False Bay, we just passed Agulhas, and everything changed. The wind changed and the current changed. The water wasn't like it was fighting with the wind. It came much smoother for that moment. And then that night, I've never seen it before where it was like Avatar. There was so much biology in the ocean. You could see every little fish swimming through. And when the canoe would break the water, it would scatter 100 feet out in this giant glow of life at sea. And then I remember the sunrise coming up, and it all kind of went away. And then we came into False Bay, and we tied up at Simonstown. And then I met you. And then being invited to your school. Craig, that's where everything changed for me, because then I knew at that moment, at that bay, that the voyage was worth it. When you took us and you sat us by the stone and we quietly listened and calmed down and we prayed, and then you asked us to breathe sacred smoke of the ancestors of that land. And then we shared life from the stones on the beach. And then we took more time to be quiet. And then you essentially asked for permission to enter the domain of the ocean. And this is everything that we search for in terms of in terms of dignity, in terms of respect, in terms of honoring the relationship of the life of the earth. We're just a member of it, and it's very, very native to us. And to find that halfway around the world, and to enter the ocean, and knowing that this is a time to be quiet in the ocean. Even though I was kind of freezing to death and hypothermia was close, it was just such a special day. And then when we left, it was one super pod of whales after one super pod of whales. It was the most powerful natural moment we had in the whole voyage.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm getting so emotional just hearing your words, Nainoa, and recounting that special time together. It's just so incredible to hear it, and my body's tingling again just with your words. It's so beautiful. And I don't know if you remember, but we did that little ritual that you talked about with that abalone shell, and that symbolizes this, this oldest chemistry on Earth, found at 100,000 years ago in this beautiful Blombos cave just up the coast. So in my mind, the Southern African coast and this ocean is kind of like the heart of the world. It seems that this is where we kind of woke up as a species over 100,000 years ago. And that's what was so exciting for me, is you came from, Hawaii, which is literally, we're 12 hours apart. We're on the opposite side of the world, and yet we spoke a language which is so similar, that language of the big mother nature, this common language we had of tracking. I learned from my San teachers, the insects and the wind were the way that they used to track. And then I kind of realized after many years diving in the water that it was the mollusks and the swell and the predation marks that allowed me to track underwater. And then you came with this incredible notion of tracking on the high seas, tracking these vast distances. And I just wanted to hear again some of the ways that you do that open ocean tracking.
First of all, know that I'm a student of great teachers, and I identify as being Hawaiian, and I'm born and raised in the Hawaiian Islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And I was born in a time where both sides of my family, my grandparents, would not teach my parents Hawaiian language, culture, and genealogy, primarily because to teach them to be who they were and want to be who they were would be dangerous. So I grew up graduating, having no idea who my ancestors were, having no idea where they came from, 2,500 miles to the south on these islands we call it Kahikinui, we now call it Tahiti, but and not knowing that we are descendants of the great navigators and the great voyagers, and having no idea. And when you look at the social, economic, education stuff as Indigenous people in Hawaii, not knowing who you are and not knowing proud of who you are is really the foundation for why every one of those statistics you're at the lowest in your own homeland. Something had to change, and we were on this very dark black road close to the edge called extinction as a people, and we didn't even know it. That's how effective it was. And then there was a dreamer who dreamt of a canoe. He was an artist that connected. It's a long story, and an anthropologist. They had a dream to build a canoe and recapture a culture. They would find the world's greatest navigator. There were no navigators left in Polynesia, the country that I come from. But there were those in Micronesia, the great navigators. And this individual would change the world. He would come to Hawaii, take our canoe Hokulea, meaning Star of Gladness, navigate it to Tahiti. See how complex it is.
You're talking about Papa Mau.
Papa Mau Pi'ailug. And then he would come back for 30 years and take us like children by the hand, pull us through the window of time into the old ocean that nobody else could do. And so we are blessed, but we're still children. But he set instructions. He set instructions. Don't ever let, he said, if there are no navigators anymore, we are people no more. When they put me in the dirt, I put the seed in the dirt in Hawaii. When the tree grows and my people want to know, they can come to that tree to know about him. What he was doing was planting seeds that were going to be his students. So he had students in Micronesia, he had students in Hawaii, and it spread throughout Polynesia. Now he's great students in Micronesia. So he was the one that was stopping extinction, but he was the one, if you want to talk about the great navigators, you need to talk about him, because I am not him. I'm just his student. I mean, he is so good, Craig, that he can lie inside the house, close his eyes, inside the house, feel the wave come from one hull to the other in a double hull canoe and tell you where you're going. And so we're just trying to keep our promises to our teachers to keep sailing, keep training, keep teaching, and keep exploring and trying to be relevant to what are the most important issues that we should sail for. And now it's the Earth, the only island we have.
This deep indigenous wisdom that comes from your teachers is so powerful in our road ahead. I love science so much, but so much of our science today comes from indigenous knowledge. And I don't think that's been properly recognized. And as we move forward now, and with these massive challenges of the climate crisis, I think it's so critical that we're drawing on that old wisdom. What would Papa Mao say to us today?
He certainly would be being able to see the changes, so he would understand. In fact, I don't want to speak for other people's islands, so I won't raise the names, but yeah, we're measuring melt in Greenland, and there are those children that are in Micronesia writing poems for the drowning islands because it's connected. And he felt this, and he just kept what he did. He kept teaching, and he kept pushing us. And then he said, if you want someone in Hawaii to know everything, send your son, because you're too old. I think this is an important message. When do we connect to nature? At what point in our lives are we still a part of nature? When do we have this world where we separate? And how do you reconnect? He says, send your son. And then he started to say, when he was picked by his grandfather to take and extend as a navigator of the family, at age 1, his grandfather would put him in different tide pools to play. And at age 5, he was already sailing in his grandfather's deep sea voyaging canoe. And he says, when the wave come and lift up my canoe, the canoe go up and down, and the canoe make me sick. He's seasick. So my grandfather tied my hands together and throw me overboard. He said that with great love for his grandfather. He says, yes, my grandfather throw me overboard so I can go in the ocean. When I go in the ocean, I can go inside the wave. When I go inside the wave, I become the wave. When I become the wave, then I'm navigated. There is no separation from the bird or the wave or the cloud or the lightning or the rain or the star or the sun or the moon from who you are as navigator. You are part of that.
It's just unbelievable. I mean, this sacredness of nature and the sacredness of the human in nature, I think, is so critical. And it speaks to this disconnection. Because when you've been fortunate enough, as I have too, I was introduced my first day literally out of the womb. I was taken by my parents into the water, and I screamed because it was very cold and everything. But my first days were in the water, and I've never been separated from it. it's so sad that so much of human society have been just wrenched from the great Mother Nature, and it's not surprising then that all these horrific things have happened. And I think it's so key that we, through the indigenous wisdom, through the old people, we find our way back to that sacredness, because when you have that connection like you're talking about, there's no ways you can desecrate the Great Mother. It's impossible. I also feel I'm just a student, I'm a student of my incredible San mentors and these amazing animals that I've had the privilege of, looking inside a lot of their sort of secret lives and being taught so profoundly by them and by nature itself. Do you think that there is a way for science and indigenous wisdom to work together?
One, it has to, and it needs to embrace each other. Once we really try to understand and have respect for indigenous knowledge, because it's not just indigenous knowledge, it's wisdom, it's culture, it's genealogy. Because if you are only a member of the family of life, then you're a part of the total genealogy, and that genealogy is very old. So that indigenous knowledge, in terms of being sustainable, has already proven itself. There's a whole kind of generation of young indigenous people who are getting educated in science. So they're standing and straddling both worlds and connecting it. And it's growing, and it's a strategy. It's a smart thing for us to have those who are born and raised, as well as have gotten the tools of an education, to really be able to integrate the two. Plus, I mean, it's happening. It's happening fast. Just recently, that Indigenous, even COP26, and its acknowledgement that Indigenous conversation and knowledge and wisdom will be every part of the conference. I mean, that wasn't there 10 years ago. Nobody raised that value, and so there. I think we're waking up to the fact that the global kind of climate crisis needs a global solution. It's going to take everyone to be a part of it. No one's going to be immune to the solution. I'm not very smart. I'm not really good at anything. What I do is I just find teachers that are going to help me explore what I believe is important. And so your film is about a teacher, but I clearly remember that quiet moment of just turning. I said, okay, now we're going to turn around Cape Good Hope, and I'm not going to be able to see this bay again on this canoe. And I knew that moment to come, and I looked back and said, God, but I have an extraordinary teacher here. He lives in this bay. Really, the re-education of humanity to its reconnection to nature. That you have to have these films that are gonna stab at the nerve of being human again, and stab at the nerve of the relationship. The relationship to nature is an obligation, not for us, but for our children and our children's children. It's not big corporations. It's not big business. It's not government. Sometimes it's a single human being with a really extraordinary team that's has the right vision in mind, and are courageous, and absolutely courageous. Nothing will get in their way to tell the truth. And that's you. That's you. And look, and I think back 6 years ago when I ran around my corner, I was thinking, this man is going to change the world. Guess what? You did. God done. For the better. And this education that needs to be at this broad scale of high inspiration that touches that kind of dormant and quiet and a place that we don't go to as human beings anymore, that relationship with nature, it needs these kinds of these films that are actually, like we would call star pathway to a destination. It takes humanity to a place, and look what you've done. Look what your team has done.
I'm deeply grateful for what you say. Try and take that into my heart. It's big. I mustn't forget. I wanted to, just take this off you. I don't know if you saw it in the background.
I didn't, but thank you for bringing it. Yeah.
But this is this incredible piece of, I believe, the old hokulea, the actual wood from the original canoe that you and your team gifted me. And it's one of my cherished things. It's such a wonderful thing. And yeah, I got so much inspiration from you coming here and those talks we had and the diving we did and being just my feet on that extraordinary canoe. I just wanted to tell me a little bit more about this incredibly powerful thing, and what this symbolizes. I can almost know it better because I never got a chance to really ask you properly.
Okay, try imagine that you're looking at the Pacific Ocean, which is more than half the salt water on the planet, 1/3 of the surface of the Earth. It's the biggest country in the world. And there is a place we call Polynesia, where it's a triangle. Hawaii in the north, and then there's Aotearoa, New Zealand, southwest, and then Rapa Nui, Easter Island in the east. Why I'm bringing it up, that's 10 million square miles. It's larger than Russia, the biggest country. It is an ocean world. And that fishhook, his name is Kamakau Nui o Maui. It means the great fishhook of Maui. They call him a demigod, but he's not. He's an ancestor. He's a navigator. He's a fisherman. And he would take that hook, and it's a magic hook, and he would throw it into the ocean, and he would hook underwater, and he'd pull islands out of the sea. So Maui would be the one that would pull life from the ocean and put life onto land. And so Maui is known throughout that massive country of 10 million square miles, that a language retained, even though we're 4,500 miles apart. But he's so central to who we are as a people and what he did for us as an ancestor. We don't call them gods, we call them ancestors. And this is part of our family. But the fishhook was really called Kamakau Nui o Maui because Maui was a great navigator. And it was given just to a handful of people that we gave around the world, that we would call the great navigators of island Earth. And so I don't know if you know that, but that's how much respect we had for you when we left. And so also Maui was, there's also the octopus called Ika o Maui. It's the octopus of Maui, that essentially the head would be at a place called Hawaii in the middle of Polynesia, and the tentacles would go out to all the islands. And this was how we remembered our family, through the octopus holding us together and keeping us connected. The tentacles kept us connected to the homeland. Some say it was called Hawaii. Some say later the name became Tapu Atea. But Maui and the octopus was what created land and held it together. And the fishhook symbolizes both of them.
That is incredible, Nainoa. I didn't know all those details, and it strikes me that this incredible piece that you honored me with, it's kind of an incredible symbol of hope. I mean, you and your team gave me enormous hope to keep diving every day, to keep speaking to the great Mother Ocean every day. You inspired me so deeply, and this is kind of. I had, I put it here in this special place because it was special to me, but I didn't understand the full implication until you've explained it now. My sense is like, I draw so much hope from people like you and your whole team and what they're doing. I draw hope from the incredible ancestry that we have as human beings, the old, deep ancestors of Africa. If we look back and we see the first grandmother and the first grandfather that walked this African shore, they birthed every single human that's ever lived on this planet. They make us one family, united across everything. What is your sense of hope? How would you describe that, especially to the young people?
Sometimes when I'm with them, they will go down the pathway of fear, and it gets really dark real quick. With the young people that I'm learning from now, I mean, they are tough and they're courageous, and they, what's interesting about them, they are a bit impatient with an old guy like me, because sometimes I'm not challenging them enough. And you know what we're doing, Craig, now is we're looking at voyaging differently. In 5 years, Hokulea will be 50 years old. I hear their conversations about challenge and about courage, and they can figure it out. And so the hope that I have is in their optimism. The hope that I have is that good science is helping all of us understand the whole living system of this complex island called Earth, and the climate change issue, the heat issue, is changing the system, and the solutions have to be about understanding those systems so you can change it. Well, there's nobody like you, but kind of like you, and that are exploring and believing in something that individuals believe amongst all the negative things that have been thrown at are still doing pretty extraordinary acts of kindness, whether it's in a bay, whether it's in a watershed, whether it's in a classroom, whether it's in the halls of universities. That I sense that there is the greatest human movement that is innately, instinctually knowing that it needs to protect its home. This very old indigenous wisdom about protect the home. And that movement is the greatest movement ever. It's not organized, and it shouldn't be. All we do now in voyaging is try to find a privileged opening just to be a part of it, just to be a part of the movement. And it's going to be immeasurable to try to add up how many people you have inspired in your work because of your commitment. It will be immeasurable to find out how many people you inspired, but it's okay because they are going to take what they took home from you and are going to make the world a better place. So every time somebody has some act of kindness in their backyard or in their classroom or in the worst of their slums, every time an individual does something that's good for the earth, no longer are we doing it for ourselves or our community, we're doing it for each other. And so when you add it up, it's extraordinary and powerful. And yes, I'm afraid of tomorrow, but I'm honored to be a part of the journey. And you are that Kamakau Nui o Maui is the absolute appropriate. It's not a gift. You earned it as one of the great navigators. And I just don't think you understand how much goodness you have created because you were just you.
Thank you so much, Nana. It's just such a privilege and an honor. This is one of the most powerful conversations I've ever had in my life, and I must thank you from the deepest part of my heart, Nana. It's such a gift from our ancestors. And the words in your description of Papa Mao being part of that wave, totally not separate, just part of wild nature, just completely embedded in wild nature. I think that's the great hope, that we have the capacity to literally be wild, find some of that wildness and hold on to that, because that is such a guiding force as we move forward. I cannot thank you enough.
I want to thank you for your commitment to the oceans. I believe there is no solution without protecting the oceans. There's no solution without a healthy oceans. I mean, there just isn't. I mean, if you look at where life comes from, how it's sustained, everything about the systems of Earth has a relationship to the atmosphere and the oceans. And so your star path towards committing to protection of the oceans, I want to work with you. That's my final word. I just want to reconnect. I miss South Africa. I mean, thank you and all of your team for, just allowing me the privilege to be with you. And I guess what I want to say is no goodbyes. I want to see you soon. And yeah, let's sail together and just make a better world.
I really would like that too. And I know this is hammered at home. So I'd love to contact you, and we are doing some very interesting stuff with conservation now on quite a big level, and I'd love you to be part of that. Your your sensibility is exactly what we need. So I'd definitely like to be in touch with that. Thanks so much for this. Oh, it's just been absolutely incredible. I'm I'm shaking a bit just from hearing your words. It's really special, but shaking in a really good way. Um, thank you so much. Bless you.